we're gonna kick off in a minute, but while we're just waiting for more people to arrive, why don't I just underline a couple of things? You can obviously see. So your people can't problem solve, and the last one is together. So that's the question that we put up. And we're going to explore this on a whole lot of different levels as soon as we get started.
Cool. So just in case anyone's wondering, I saw a question there and it's flown by in the chat. You are all muted except for us three that you can see in front of you. That's just how the webinar thing works. If there's a setting that we really want to do it, we can go and click on your name and invite you to speak or something like that. But if you want to interact, send stuff to this chat thing. That'll come to us three, and we'll try and do that. So Karl's going to ask you a few questions as you go along, bounce back. It was important, we'll just use the chat. The advantage of using the webinar thing is that we don't have unusual body parts on display from people in the audience. I had a friend who's quite sort of actually genuinely horrified from a webinar they held just using the general Zoom facility when people would come in and their cameras weren't pointed at their faces. So we're trying to save you all and us from that horror.
Yeah, and the other thing is with webinars, you can connect with so many people. And when you have a large audience of people, having lots of voices coming through makes it a bit tricky. So we are going to invite you to put some stuff in the chat. And then both Clark and Graham are going to help me out. So they're going to keep an eye on that chat. And if they see something like a good question or a relevant point or something like that, they will feed it into the conversation. That way I can stay focused on actually delivering some content and basically trying to entertain you for the next 50 to 55 minutes. And Clark and Graham can kind of help us to bring in some of your content and help you engage in the webinar. So it's a bit like a live thing. You wouldn't, when you've got a room with a couple of hundred people in it, you can't have everybody speaking at the same time. It just doesn't work. But you can from time to time take questions, and that's really helpful. So so we encourage you to engage and encourage you to put stuff in the chat, and then Clark and Graham can pick it up. Clark, hey, I'm wondering, should we jump into it and actually do exactly that? Hey, in the chat, can you just tell us where you're from, and more importantly, what are you hoping to learn from this webinar? Because there was a reason why you showed up today. There must have been something that piqued your interest that you went, that might be worth having a look at. So in the chat, can you please put in, where are you from and what are you hoping to learn from this webinar? USA, says Scott. That's fantastic. We're in the USA.
You're having a big day today, Scott.
Tauranga. Oh, and how to help others to problem solve. Awesome.
Hello, Ian from the UK. That's awesome. Ian is a TOC expert. Hey, Michael, you're in London. And you made it into, sorry, I don't know what's going on in Zoom. That's good. Who else have we got?
So what are you hoping to learn? What are you hoping to learn from this webinar? Stimulation on engagement and solutions. Anything. Oh, that's good. I love people who can say, just tell me anything. It's great. Because I love it. We can meet the expectations. Collaborative techniques. Cool. Adopt more TOC and improve the agile practices. Well, fortunately, I can talk about group performance, but we've also got an agile expert here as well. As you know, Clark's pretty sharp on that stuff, so that's cool.
Holland. Hello, Erwin.
Holland. Oh, cool. More virtual ideas for getting teams to work together. Interesting. Yes.
Brilliant.
Lift leadership capability. Cool. problem solving in a constructive way. Fantastic.
Lovely. Learn more about
Happy
TOC.
to learn more about TOC.
Good.
Fantastic.
That sounds pretty good. Do you want to go to the next slide, Karl? Because it sounds like we've got the right mix here. So I'll just introduce the other ones, because most of you, I suspect, know me already. I'm Clark Ching, and I call myself the bottleneck guy, which, anyway, moving on. I do Agile plus TOC. Graham, who's in the other side of the screen there, just somewhere next to me on the screen. Graham Scott is the guy waving. He's a TOC teacher, and he's like all three of us. We've been doing TOC for a long time. Graham teaches the thinking processes as well as other stuff, but his expertise is his background speciality is accounting. And some of you may have seen recently, I pointed towards his dissertation for his master's on how accounting budgeting practices cause all sorts of trouble, and maybe Graham will share that some other time in a webinar. And Karl, who is today's entertainment, Karl is, there we go, a performance coach and TOC facilitator. So I'm going to frame this, and I'm going to use my words. So we're all in New Zealand, the three of us, except I'm in the South Island. Karl and Graham are in the North Island, living in different cities. But when COVID happened, we kind of developed we basically, what we did is every Monday we set up an hour and a half to have a chat about what's going on in the world, and we just basically were mutually coaching each other, which was really nice to have support. But what we discovered is that as TOC experts, over the years, we'd sort of started all using it in very similar ways, in very similar domains. And a lot of it was around how we help people collaborate and work together. So I think we've bounced off each other, and we're all much richer for that. And we just decided we'd like to share some of that stuff. And today, we're going to get Karl to talk about collaborative problem solving. So when Karl and I talked about this the other day, there's going to be a mixture of theory, there's going to be a mixture of practice. If you only get the practice, you'll miss out the most useful bit, which is just frames everything. If you only get the theory, you'll fall asleep. So there's a nice mixture there. We want you to leave this going away thinking, okay, here's some stuff that I can actually use in the real world. And with that, over to Karl.
Thanks, Clark. Look, and I'll just give Clark a quick plug as well. The reason this webinar actually happened is because last week, Clark did a great webinar on focusing on customers and using Agile plus TOC and working with and trying to improve relationships with customers. And on the back of that, we started having a conversation. Then he said, well, why don't we do another one? And let's talk about the people inside the organization and the culture, because obviously those two things are really well connected. So that's what we're going to end up talking about. Clark's already pointed out that one of the things that the three of us have in common is a thing called TOC. Now, for those of you who don't know TOC, TOC was actually a creation of this guy, Eliyahu Goldratt. And he is pretty famous for writing a book called The Goal, a process of ongoing improvement. Now, that book, you can see over 6 million copies sold. I think that might have been the case. I'm not sure what year that was, but I'm sure that there have been many, many more copies sold, especially since Jeff Bezos once said from Amazon, actually, this is required reading for all of my senior management team. So what I really like, though, about TOC and where my passion comes from is when we talk about the goal. One of the things about this particular book, now most people think it's just about manufacturing, right? And it's just about process. But when I read the goal, I have a completely different take on it, because I look at it and I go, this is actually about problem solving. The goal is about problem solving. It's about this guy called Alex Rogo. Now, he's kind of the hero in the whole story. Alex Rogo is the hero. He's the one that saves the day. But behind Alex Rogo is another guy called Jonah. And Jonah actually helps Alex to problem solve. right throughout the whole book. And so that's for me, that's really fascinating. But the outcome of Alex learning how to problem solve is something really special. And that is, he actually improves his relationship with his wife, with Julie. He actually improves his relationship with the people that he works with. And he actually improves his relationship with the board. So through his problem solving, he actually improves all of his relationships. And so when I read the goal, that's what I get from it. Now, Eliyahu Goldratt is pretty smart. He's written about 5 other books, actually probably more than that, but these are the key ones. Now, this one here I find really interesting because it's not luck. It's actually about trying to work out what the mission is. For organizations, he's saying, well, when we problem solve, the first thing we need to do is say, what's the mission? Now, when I read Critical Chain, most people think, well, that's actually about project management. I really like the cover on this particular book because on the cover, it's an unusual one. It's not the original one. There are people with their hands joined together on the book cover. Because Critical Chain is actually about a lecturer who facilitates a group of clever people who have been involved and experienced in project management, and he facilitates them to come up with a breakthrough solution. So that's all about facilitating problem solving. So I think this is pretty clever. So right at the beginning, the goal is about improving relationships. It's not luck, it's about making sure you're clear about the mission. Critical Chain is actually about how to facilitate it. But then he goes on, really smart, isn't it obvious? This book is actually about how to build problem solving into your business. So this is problem solving in business. And I went, that's clever. That's really clever. Then he goes one step further. And when he goes to the choice, he goes, well, actually, that's about personal problem solving. And I think personal problem solving, I think the reason he wrote that is because he realized it was really important for leaders to know how to problem solve personally so that they could help people problem solve in business so that they can facilitate breakthrough solutions and deliver on the mission. So if you want to work back, we just go all the way back to the mission. And so that's what I see when I see these books. But look, there's been lots of other people who have built on these ideas and this content. And one of them, and I love this guy, Simon Sinek. He always says, start with why. And I kind of went, all right, start with why. Actually, that's probably a really good idea. Now, what I want you to do is in the chat, I want you to tell us, why do you want your people to problem solve together? Give us some ideas. What would be the purpose? Why? Why are we even standing here? What are the benefits? Who can tell us in the chat? Better outcomes and learning faster. Nice. Yeah, absolutely. Collective wisdom. Oh, I like that. Love collective wisdom. Learn to work together and be a better team. A sense of ownership. Our collective mindset and mental well-being is improved. Nice. Shared understanding. Love this stuff. Collective learning, a solution that's likely to have good scrutiny before starting. Ensuring that as many ideas as possible are gathered. So if we had all of those things, commitment to outcome, to a common outcome, if we had all of those things, what is it? What's the why? So I'm going to take a complete sidestep here. I'm going to take a complete sidestep. And I've already changed the presentation, by the way. I'm going to change the focus and go, all right, first of all, spot the difference. Take a look at this photo, spot the difference, and then what was their mission? What were they up to? That was a question I've just added, by the way. I wasn't going to use that question, but I've just suddenly realized it was a good idea. So first of all, spot the difference. In the chat, tell me what's the difference. I did put do not disturb on my iPad, and for some reason it's ignored me completely. The middle guy is hiding his wedding ring. I love it. It must be down here somewhere, is it? Yeah, the helmets are different. Yes, check that out. The helmets are different. Now that's actually the thing that I noticed as well. Why are the helmets different? There's actually a reason why those helmets are different, because they have different jobs. They have different expertise. Two are smiling and one isn't. Yeah, I know. Check this guy out. He's not that happy. He's not that happy. Yeah, I don't actually know the purpose, but actually, if you look, the rings here are different. I don't know if it's because they ran out of paint when they were doing the other two. Now, the reason I bring this up is because these guys have different jobs. And if you look at their helmets, it tells you a little bit. They didn't land on the moon. Oh, well, yeah, possibly, possibly. Someone was always going to say that, right? Someone was always going to say they didn't land on the moon. Okay, fair enough. They pretended to land on the moon, and we can still use it as a great example. Now that we've spotted the difference, we can see that they have different jobs. Now, I'm just going to share something else with you. Have a look at this. Where are all the astronauts? Now, there's one obvious one. You should be able to see this guy. There's one. Now, where are the other two? I think the middle guy stayed in the command module. And the others landed on the moon. Oh, well done. Well done. So one guy's on the moon. Now, one guy could be in here, and that was what I originally thought, but then I realized that somebody had to take the photo. That's my version of a camera. Don't know if it's much good. Somebody had to take the photo. But the point is, there's a guy somewhere up here, and we can't see him. But he's really, really important because he actually was the one that stayed in the command module. And his name was Martin Collins. Now, this is important because just because we didn't see him doesn't mean he wasn't there. But more importantly, just because we don't see him doesn't mean he wasn't a really valuable contributor. Because he was an incredibly valuable contributor. Without Martin Collins doing the work that he did, nobody would have got home. They wouldn't have been able to achieve the mission, because the mission was to land on the moon, but the other half of the mission was to get home. Both parts to it. An interesting thing, though, that really made me think was when I was reading about Martin Collins, is that I realized, there was a little article on it. He was one of the guys, this guy here is the person who has been the furthest away from people and the planet than any other person in the world. He was actually on the other side of the moon, and he was completely isolated, completely by himself, and he was completely cut off from mission control, which means, oh, Michael Collins, not Martin. Thank you. I've made a big error there. Check that out. Oh, hang on. I'll fix that right now. Don't know what Collins was his name. Collins. Now, the thing about that is that these guys, as you kind of get the idea, these guys were miles and miles and miles away from this place. Mission control. Where do you think the decisions that were important were being made? That's a question. You don't have to answer that. But where do you think the decisions that were important were being made? Because, yeah, these guys here in this panel, and this guy here in this panel, and this guy here in this panel, and these guys, and these guys, and these guys, and these guys, and probably this guy here, yep, they were all making decisions. But the ones that were making the biggest difference, and the only way that these guys here at Mission Control could really understand and know what was going on, was actually 3 guys that were closer to the moon than the Earth that we were living on. So That's a really important thing to be thinking about as we start thinking about problem solving. More importantly, mission control, we need to be thinking about, well, what is the mission? And when I asked you this question before about what is the mission, or why do we want people to problem solve? Now, Eliyahu Goldratt was really clever. I talked about this before. It's not luck, it's about mission. It's about creating prosperity in an organization. And so what he said in chapter 30, and I thought this was really clever. One, for prosperity, we must make more money. We must make money now as well as in the future. We also need to provide a safe, secure, and satisfying environment for the people. And we need to provide satisfaction to the market. Now, those three things are really important if the mission is prosperity. And I really love this, because we as top managers must make sure that our companies provide all of them. Top managers are like the mission control, right? They're the ones that have to actually help everything keep moving along in terms of mission control. But it's the people actually on the moon that are providing the information and the knowledge that we need to keep things moving along. So when we look at this mission, and there's another way of looking at this, and that is we can look at business prosperity. So Goldratt was talking about three necessary conditions. One is we need to make money. And now think about that as one of the legs of a three-legged stool. Two, we need to satisfy customers. Kind of makes sense. Three, we need employees who feel safe, secure, and satisfied. We need a constructive culture, right? So if we have those three things, then we can have business prosperity. Now, one of the things I need to say about this, though, is the three things are not about getting balance. Now, a lot of people say, so we need to balance making money, satisfying customers, and a culture, but it's not about balance. The thing that makes a three-legged stool work is the tension between the three. It's the tension that holds the top up. Without the tension, it actually doesn't work. So it's important to get the tension right. Now, tension can cause problems. We're going to talk about the tension and the conflict it can cause. But what we need to be aware of when we're thinking about problem solving is that we need to harness that tension. That's at an organizational level, but also at a group and individual team level. So those are the three necessary conditions. Let's have a really quick look at these, because I'm conscious that I can get too excited about this stuff. Commercial responsibility, right? Now, this is right into Graham's area. Graham is an expert in the finance sector. He's also taken TOC and he's applied it to being commercially responsible. Now, he's going to tell me if I'm right or wrong. Well, he won't actually, but one of the things that we know about commercial responsibility is we must have customer value. You cannot get commercially responsible. You cannot increase profitability or even increase the volume of service within the available resources without improving customer value. Now, Clark can tell you a lot about that. He'll tell you about Agile. He can tell you about TOC, because that's about increasing customer value, right? And the other thing is, in order to have commercial responsibility, you must have a safe, secure, and satisfying environment for the people. Because if you don't, then they are not going to either help customer value, or they're not going to spend money very well. I mean, people don't spend money well when they're under stress. They don't make good decisions about spending money when they're under stress. So commercial responsibility, that's really key. So now that takes care of Graham. Graham's happy now, provided that we back him, provided Clark helps him deliver on customers, and I help him create safe and secure, satisfying environments for the people, then Graham's going to be happy. What about Clark and customer value? Right, so when it comes to customer value, obviously, one of the things that Clark is going to be asking for is, give me some money so we can spend money on improvement initiatives. We can do Agile, we can do TOC. So in order for Clark to be successful and have customer value, we need commercial responsibility. That makes sense. But the other thing, and this is what I hear from a lot of agile people, I don't hear it as much from Clark because I think he's kind of knows a little bit more about this space. And that is, you actually have to engage people. It needs to be safe, secure, and satisfying environment, because without that, agile doesn't work. I've actually heard this a lot when people say to me, why isn't my continuous improvement or my agile or my lean or my TOC initiative, why isn't it working? And I say, well, I don't know. Why do you think it's not working? Well, because the people won't do what they're told. Could be something in that, right? The people won't do what they're told. Could be something in that. So it's really important, if we want customer value, we need to provide a safe, secure, and satisfying environment. Now, the area that I work in the space of culture, right? I work and specialize in workplace performance, providing safe, secure, and satisfying environments for people. And I get that there are two fundamental necessary conditions for delivering that. One is it must have something to do with being commercially responsible, because if we don't help the organization be commercially responsible, there is no safety or security. No organization, no security of income. But also, when we talk about customer value, people want to do good work. And people want to do good work that adds value. And the only people who can really determine whether or not the work has any value is the customer. So we need to think about that, because the two necessary conditions for a constructive culture, a safe, secure, and satisfying environment for the people, is commercial responsibility and customer value. Now, having looked at all that, and you think about it from that perspective of a three-legged stool, it's pretty easy to see that actually those three things are completely mutually dependent on each other. And because they're mutually dependent on each other, you can't have one without the other. We have to understand the tension that sits between these three things. But if we just kind of move these things in and we said, all right, we're going to find out how to manage this tension. If we get that right, we end up with one of the most sound structures in our world, a pyramid. It's resilient, it's sustainable, it's reliable. It's one of the strongest types of shapes there are, the pyramid. So that's the 3Cs model. That's bringing customer value, commercial responsibility, and constructive culture. Now, I mentioned the tension. The tension is really, really important, because the tension causes a problem with respect to problem solving. Just a little point here, and this is a bit like Collins, and that is, just because you don't measure culture or you don't measure customer value, it doesn't mean it isn't there. And in fact, it may be more important if you want to have a sustainable mission and get back to earth. So you can measure the commercials, but you must be thinking about customer value and culture. Okay, moving on. That was just a little bit of history. Those three guys, awesome. No, that was a pretty amazing thing. And it actually happened to be, actually I won't go there because it'll tell you how old I am, but how exciting on that particular year.
Can I ask a question there, Karl?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So those three things, the three legs of the pyramid, the stool. So customer stuff is about giving value to our customer and giving more and more value to our customer. Yeah. Commercial responsibility is about making money for our organization. Is that?
Yeah. So making money actually is on a number of different levels, right? First of all, it's obviously the shareholders.
Yes.
But also it's actually about making money inside the organization. So making money so that people can get paid for the work they do.
Okay, right. Yeah.
So yes, commercial responsibility is about shareholder value.
Yep.
But it's also about enough money for the organization to be sustainable. Look, a lot of companies at the moment are feeling the pressure of a constrained amount of money. And the thing is, one of the challenges of that is trying to balance those 3 Cs, that tension between the 3 Cs.
Right.
Um,
And the third one, the third one is about people working together and enjoying going to work and feeling
yeah,
safe.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
cool. Yeah, no, I just want to clarify that
So,
because yeah, just the language, make money.
yeah. Oh, so no, that's cool. Yeah. So more money,
Yep,
more customer value, and the
yep,
one that now Goldratt used to talk about secure and satisfying, but
yep,
I think safe is important as well. So
yep.
safe, secure, and satisfied work environment.
Right. Okay.
Now the safety and the security actually comes predominantly from commercial responsibility,
Right.
but
Yes. Yeah.
the satisfaction comes from delivering something of value.
Right. Okay. And they all connect. That's cool.
And
It's
they,
like win-win-win for
yeah,
everyone, not just win-win. It's win-win
yeah,
for
yeah. So
everyone.
I'm going to talk.
Cool.
Nice one, Clark. Because I'm going to talk about win-win-win instead of lose-lose-lose.
Excellent. I'll let
Because
you
there's
segue
actually,
into that then. This is really interesting.
yeah, cool. So just a little bit more history, right? Because if we want to think about the 3Cs in a historical context, then the first thing that we can look at is in the industrial age. In the industrial age, the only thing we cared about was commercial responsibility. We didn't really care about customer value because we didn't need to. We had mass production. And we actually didn't really care too much about the people doing the work either, because actually there was lots of them. So in the industrial age, the commercial responsibility was the key driver. Now, don't get me wrong, that absolutely works. It absolutely works. And it certainly works in that environment. It worked in the industrial age. It worked when there was mass production, when things were stable and certain. But we've kind of moved on from that because, and Clark, you'll know about this, customer value and continuous improvement and finding improvements to customer value. This has become really, really important because when, and this has kind of been the last 20, 30 years, I think maybe a little bit longer, but we need to find ways to improve customer value because our customers have more choice and we need to be more flexible and adaptable in terms of the continuous improvement. But we know from our previous conversation that there are 3 legs to this stool. So in the chat, tell me, which one would culture best connect to either customer value or commercial responsibility? So jump in the chat, people. Tell us, where do you think? So somebody says customer value straight off the bat. First in. Both. Yep, absolutely. This is a bit of a trick question. Customer value comes, Becky. Yep, nice. Both. So my question is, where does it best fit? Because you're right, they fit in both. Having a culture, a constructive culture, means you spend money wisely and you can find customer value. But one of them fits better than the other. And I'll show you where. Commercial responsibility, says Mike. Yep, they fit in both. But what I usually find is the best place is a safe, secure, and satisfying environment produces more customer value, which allows us to get more commercial responsibility. That seems to be the fastest way. Now, you can go the other way around, but the way I just described it, from culture to customer value, is actually about increasing income. If you go the other way around, it's usually about reducing cost. So we go from culture to commercial responsibility, then you tend to end up with a focus on cost. Now, it's a question of choice then. You are either focusing on cost or you're trying to increase the volume of income. But more importantly, there's actually a problem that shows up here. Because Houston, we have a real problem. What happens when you try and do all 3 of these things? And some of you will be familiar with this conversation, especially if you ever worked in a union environment where you've got employer and employee. Finance says we want to pay less money and get more time. Now, I know from many conversations I've had with Graham, that he goes, yep, that's basically what it's been about most of the time. We want to pay less money and get more time. Now, Graham's paper actually really challenges that assumption. So if you ever get a chance to pick that up and have a read of it, you should do. But there's something else that happens, and that is employees say, we want more money and less time. Well, straight away, you can see the conflict, right? Now, the continuous improvement people, people like Clark, they say we want more value from the money and time we have. So what we've actually got is competition for time and money. And when we have competition for time and money, we end up with a conflict. And that's a serious problem. So in the chat, what I'd like you to do is tell me, what are some of the conflicts that turn up because of this competition? Somebody's already mentioned something. It only becomes about cost reduction. Yep. We need to find a win-win solution. Decreased quality, says Mike. Yep. Absolutely. What else happens in terms of this conflict? What shows up? Decreased quality, Mike? Yeah. Anybody else? Unhappy employees. Yep, absolutely. Lack of strategic focus. Yep. These are great. Different goals and different paths. Employees leave. Stress. Ah, now we're onto it. Silos. Unhappy customers. Yep. Love it. Yeah, so these are absolutely common. Well, that was actually the question I wanted. I forgot to slide it on. But those are the problems that show up. Now, I've been quite fortunate in my career in that I often get invited to work with large companies. And one of them, in the last couple of years, I was invited to work with a really large company in the UK. And there had been lots and lots of conflict over the years. So all of those things that you are talking about in the chat, that stuff was showing up. And the conflict got to a point that the unions and their members had actually gone, no, stuff this. And they went on strike. And it was costing the company millions of pounds a day. And I'm not talking a year, I'm talking a day. And the customers were losing out. The service was flattened. The employees lost out as well. It was a complete lose, lose, lose situation. Clark, to your point, we need a win-win-win solution. Well, this is a lose, lose, lose. All right. So I showed this conflict to senior managers and the union. I did it separately because the conflict was so much that, you know, you need to kind of work separately before you come together as a group of people. And I asked them how it turned up for them. And here is what they told me. This is live, right? This was a live workshop. They had disengaged workforce. They had 9-to-5ers, stifled creativity, poor goodwill, conflict, strike threats, grievances, staff turnover, pessimisms, labour shortages, blame, complete breakdowns in trust. So all of the things that you guys have just talked about in the chat. Now, I did exactly the same thing and asked the employees, what do you think? And they said this. There's a dictatorship. It's our way or the highway. Ignored protocols, short-term focus, inefficiency, work to rule, stagnation. Now, I don't know about you guys, but when you look at these two lists, do you think this is particularly good for problem solving? Well, I don't, because I don't think it is. And so we actually need to take care of some of this stuff. That's not an easy task, because if it was easy, they would have already done it, right? So what we can see is that these things here, this list here, that is a result of the conflict. Now, we could actually break those conflicts up into two different things. First of all, it's all disharmony. It's all bad. It's not working for us. But there are two things. One, people are being passive and people are being aggressive. It's either passive or aggressive. And when we have passive aggressive thinking and behavior, then we end up with poor performance. Now, passive aggressive behavior is not good for problem solving. Now, here's the real challenge, right? Because when the performance drop, what do the accountants do, Graham? The commercial failure. Well, I can tell you what they do.
They start, took me a while to find my mute.
Yeah,
they start slashing costs. They start shortcutting things like repairs and maintenance. They stop hiring and replacing people.
Yeah.
We do all those sort of things.
So basically, we try and convert more improvements into financial outcomes somehow. We try to get more commercial responsibility. So, but then you also end up with dissatisfied customers. Now, Clark, I know you probably gave you a heads up because I asked Graham the question, but what happens when we have dissatisfied customers? What sort of processes and things do we want to invest more in?
Hang on, ask that again.
What sort of processes, when we've got dissatisfied customers and we're not delivering value to customers, what do we want to invest money in?
We're making them happier. We want to serve
making them happier.
Better products. Yeah.
Better products, yeah. And we might use things like investing in Agile and TOC in order to improve customer value. Yeah, so that's cool. Except that these are going to start looping on themselves in a minute, because one of the other things that happens is there's an impact on culture, and that is we end up with a passive-aggressive culture. Now, I know some people don't really know what that is, but this is just a way of measuring passive-aggressive culture. That's all it is, right? And so when we see a passive-aggressive culture, what actually happens is that passive-aggressive behavior, when we link it to problem solving, and you can see these people here. So there's a couple of people sitting at a table trying to problem solve, a couple of water cooler problem solving sessions on a whiteboard, and some group problem solving. Well, if people are being passive aggressive, then what's actually going to happen is poor problem solving. So this is an organizational context in terms of mission control. So poor problem solving, we actually want to try and change this. It's having an impact on prosperity, because this conflict is causing poor cultures, it's causing poor customer value, and it's causing poor commercial responsibility. And ultimately, it has an impact on prosperity, and that's a real problem. So this cycle at an organizational level is actually not doing us any favors. If we only focus on one of the legs of the stools, it's actually going to increase the cycle. We have to focus on all three. Now, how to fix that? Well, now this is going to be a really fast look at it, right? Because it's obviously far deeper and more complex than just switching one thing or doing this or doing that, right? How to fix it? Well, we need to look at all three of these things. We need to convert improvements into financial outcomes, find improvements to customer value, and have safe, secure, and satisfying environment for the people. And so here's what I usually talk to people about. Now, this is not new, by the way, but it's have employees use their time finding ways to make money from increasing customer value. Now, that does take a bit of investment to do that. But as I said, this is not new, because actually that's what this guy did. Don't know if any of you know the Toyota production system, but he said, why not make the work easier and more interesting so that people do not have to sweat? The Toyota style is not to create results by working hard. It's a system that creates where there is no limit to people's creativity. They can come up with solutions and ideas and innovation. People don't go to Toyota to go there to work. They go there to think. Thinking is problem solving. But he's not the only one. There's another guy that did some stuff on this as well. And I love this story, Turn the Ship Around, by Captain Mark Hay. If you ever get a chance to read this one, it's excellent. But more importantly, the foreword by Stephen Covey is around actually creating an environment where we release people's knowledge and intuition and experience. So one more little snippet, and this is a local example, but I really like this local example because Christopher Luxon at Air New Zealand, he was chief exec from 2012 to 2019. And right at the very beginning, he made it really clear. If we want a sustainable future, 5, 10, 15 or 20 years, then his job was to look after the commercials, look after customer experience, and look after culture. Now, to be fair, nobody expected COVID, right? And a global pandemic. Now, that may have shifted the things a little bit, but actually, if we want to rebuild and repair out of a global pandemic like we have right now, we are going to have to recover from all the people going back to focusing on just the commercials. The people who do get the 3 C's right are going to recover faster than the people who don't, because the people who focus on all 3 won't get stuck in that loop that we've just looked at. So, by the way, they had the 2 best financial years in their 80-year history during that period, multiple customer satisfaction awards, and increased employee engagement. So all 3 metrics.
Can I interrupt?
Yeah.
Can I just get that? Because I know the COVID thing is like, it's kind of got everyone sort of looking inward, and everyone
Yeah.
feeling like there's this scarcity
Yeah.
out there. And you're kind of, I think what you're saying is actually to maintain that, but also to dig your way out by looking outside of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so. I think the word scarcity is great, and we should probably talk to Graham about scarcity, because when people start saying we need to reduce cost, that's a scarcity focus. It's like there's a limited amount of money in the world, so we need to protect all that we've got. Smaller.
You kind of have this stance looking down.
Yeah. And to be fair, we do need that stability, and you do need to be commercially responsible. There is no doubt about that.
Yep.
But the faster that you can move from getting to that scarcity, opening it up to increasing customer value and engaging the people and increasing more value, then we move to an abundance thinking a lot faster.
And that has to be a deliberate choice, because it's hard when you're in there.
Oh, look, absolutely. And there are many obstacles to actually being able to do that. And I'm going to show you some of the very high level strategic ones. I mean, I can't show you all of it in one webinar, right?
Yeah.
It's just that it's impossible. I can give you an overview of it, and then I can give you a little taster of maybe a couple of things you want to think about when it comes to creating a good group of problem solvers. But first of all, bigger system, we need to think about the organizational context. And I think this quote from Christopher Luxton does it really well. Cool. When we're thinking from an organizational context, we need to be able to manage the tension between the 3 C's. If we manage the tension between the 3 C's, we create an environment and across the organization where it's where problem solving is of value. So back to mission control, right? Back to mission control and thinking about the 3 C's and how we go about doing it. Now, I'm really conscious of time. I might be excited about it, but you know, some of this content, I might have actually bitten off a bit more than I could chew. I might have got too much content in here. But the challenge, right? The challenge for an organization is have employees use their time finding ways to make money from increasing customer value, i.e. doing problem solving. Now, I was going to ask in the chat, can you tell us what do you think the obstacles are? I'm actually going to give you my list. You might have some more, but one is focusing on the commercials. Just focusing on the commercials will get in the way of doing that. But we also have a whole bunch of hierarchical structures that will also potentially cause a problem. Then there's the autocratic leadership. Lots of conversation about autocratic versus consensus-based or facilitative leadership. And that's what that book, Turn the Ship Around, was about. Moving from an autocratic leadership style to a more facilitative style. Decisions made by people far away from where the work is done, right? If mission control was making decisions without talking to the 3 guys that were actually on the moon, I think there'll be problems. Right, and it could probably kill them. So probably really important to stay engaged with the people who are on the moon. Conflict over priorities for improvement. What should we do first? What should we do second? Shall we stay alive, or should we land on the moon, or should we do both? Then there is people being encouraged to be busy, and I'm sure you've all seen this one before. Lots and lots of people going, got to be busy, got to be busy, got to be busy. I'm even guilty of this one myself. I always think that if the busier I am, the more productive I'm going to be. It doesn't work. Measuring one thing, usually just the commercials. Right, so now I'm only going to give you an absolute glimpse of some of the things you need to think about from an organizational context and a mission control perspective. The solutions, focus on the 3 C's. I've already talked about that in terms of managing the tension. Second, have more of a collaborative structure. That's harder to do than much easier to say rather than do. But we need to work out how to get more collaboration in our structure. We need to have facilitative leadership. Now that does take a bit of leadership development. There are people with many habits still born from the industrial age around command and control management styles. People close to the work involved in the decision making. There are too many times when people are far away from the work or the gemba, if you think about Toyota production system, are making decisions without the information from the people who are close. Strategic prioritization based on the 3 C's. There's always an argument about which improvement should happen next. People being taught to problem solve. So if you don't teach people how to problem solve, then they're probably not going to be much good at problem solving. Now, there's going to be a little bit more on that later. And finally, measure the commercials, the customer value, and the culture. You have to measure all 3. If you don't measure all 3, then you'll likely end up going back to just focusing on one, and you're going to end up cycling in that loop again. Now, as I said, this is a much bigger strategy, right? But this strategy, if you bring all the pieces together, you can see the different levels. They actually do come in a prerequisite order. They work faster if you start at the bottom with level 1. Start here. Once you've done that and you've made a commitment, then you move to trying to get some more collaboration, maybe a mission control kind of steering committee situation. It's different for every organization. Then you need to focus on some facilitative leadership and develop your leadership. Involve the people, prioritize the improvement initiatives. Now we get to problem solve. And if you get people involved after doing these things, then what will happen is you'll start getting a more constructive culture, more satisfied customers, and more commercial responsibility. This is looping on itself in a really positive way, ultimately ending up in more prosperity. Obviously, measuring is useful as a strategy. You don't have to do it, but it's useful if you want to stay focused on the 3 C's. So back to the team. Now we've seen mission control, back to the team. I'm going to give you just a tiny little snippet of this stuff in here. So when you want people to do this in the context of this whole strategy, we need to think about the team itself. And so effective problem solving. There's only 3 necessary conditions. It's quite simple. And you'll know these: skill and expertise. Those pilots, those astronauts, they knew lots and lots and lots of stuff. Lots of stuff. They trained for a long, long time. The next piece, you've got to have effective interpersonal behavior, because they worked at being a team together. If they were going to be stuck in that tight, confined compartment for that many days with that much stress and that much tension, do you think they might have had to do some work on actually being mates? Because you wouldn't want to get angry with each other in that environment, because conflict in that environment ain't going to work. So that's really important, interpersonal behavior. And the last thing is, do you think those guys were pretty good at problem solving? I mean, they were engineers after all. So think about that. That's a little plug to you engineers who are watching. Rational thinking, right? Rational thinking processes. Now, here's a tip for you. If you are ever facilitating a group of people and it gets stuck and it goes round and round in circles and there's conflict showing up and you just don't know what's going on, ask yourself one of 3 questions. 1, do we have the skill and expertise in the room? Because if you don't have that, then you're going to go around in circles. 2, how are we treating each other? Are we respecting each other? Do we have constructive interpersonal behavior? Because if you don't have that, then it's likely that your problem solving is not going to be good. And then 3, are you following the process? I mean, it could be as simple as an agenda. If you have the agenda, or we could use something more complex, like the processes that Clark and Graham and I use, which is use some TOC thinking process structure. But there are multiple different ones that you can use for rational thinking. Now, a little bit more. Okay, good decisions. There are 2 necessary conditions for good decisions. If you do the first 3 things in terms of group problem solving, you're going to end up with more quality, pretty much guaranteed, because you'll get there faster. That is multiplied by something else. And that multiplied by is important. It's actually multiplied by the acceptance. But more importantly, it's acceptance by those who must implement the decision. Because if those guys sitting in the capsule on the moon, close to the moon, if they don't think that it's a good decision and it will kill them, they probably ain't going to do it. So think about that, right? If they don't buy in, if they're not part of the problem solving, then they're not going to do it. They're going to say, no, stuff it. We think that this is the right way. I'm sure you might have seen that in the organizations a few times. So by those who must implement it. So what we've got is good decision-making from a group. We need the skill and the expertise, interpersonal behavior, rational thinking, all of this stuff, quality solution and acceptance. And so here's what you need to be thinking about. 1, choose the right people or have access to them. And quite often the right people are the people who are closest to the problem. They know more about the stuff than anyone else does. Secondly, create ground rules or have some kind of team development. Ground rules is a good start. Developing the team to make it stronger, that really helps in terms of interpersonal behavior. And finally, use some kind of rational problem solving. So the rational problem solving really helps actually in terms of the team development as well. Bring those two things together and you get some real synergy. So those are the 3 things. And by the way, this is a little plug for the 3 of us. TOC is really good for this. TOC is really good for rational problem solving, especially if you know how to do the other 2 things. And that's the work that I work with, and that's the work that I do. I mean, there is a reason why the 3 of us, Clark, customer value, Graham, commercial responsibility, and me, culture, have actually come together, is because we get that we need each other's expertise and knowledge. And we use TOC ourselves to actually collaborate and do some really exciting stuff with organizations. So if you want some more stuff, look, meet.yourthinkingcoach.com. There's a whole lot of stuff in there, but probably what would be better is to check in on what's next, right? Which is we've got a webinar series coming up. I think Clark's about to put in the link in the chat so everybody can see it. Clark is going to talk about one particular type of rational thinking process called corkscrew thinking. It's based on Goldratt's theory of constraints and the conflict cloud. And so he's going to talk about what it is. Graham is going to talk about how to do it. And I'm going to talk about what would stop you from doing it and how to help you to get better at it. So that's what's coming up. We'd really welcome you to come along. I think, yep, Clark has put it up in the chat. So register there and really hope to see you at one of those 3. The 3 of us will be showing up again just to help each other out as we go. So last thing, just to wrap up, thank you very much for your time. Thanks, Clark and Graham. Really appreciated your help and your support. I know most of it was moral on the way through this time, but this was really enjoyed the exercise. But your expertise are sitting right behind me. I know it. So that's really, really cool. So in the chat, just give us a bit of feedback. What's one thing that was a highlight for you from this session? Either a highlight or something you've learned, some little takeaway that's been of value for you.
Yep. Karl,
3 C's being really explained well. Nice.
I'll read these out because you need to hear them.
Okay. Okay, right. Thank you.
So the 3 C's being really explained well. I thought that too. Just especially the analogy with the astronauts, it really helped.
Yeah.
The importance in balancing the tension. That's really good. So that's from Becky. The earlier one was from Mike. Kevin just said, great, thanks, Karl and C and G. Michael wants to know the Meet Your Coach link. Have you got a link to your site that you could type in?
Oh, yeah. So meet, meet.yourthinkingcoach.com. Or look me up on LinkedIn is another really good way to
or if you want, ping me as well.
There it is.
And I'll do it.
Yep.
The diagram is really helpful in understanding and describing the relationships and the effect of the imbalance. I like that, the imbalance you were describing. And that was from Sonia. Michael, the necessity for tension. Yeah, that was quite startling for me too. Loved the 3 C's. You'd love to hear about the 4th C, I'm sure, but we haven't made that one up yet. That was from Adelbert. And then we got Scott, group decision-making. Understanding how to do this is helpful. And Scott's put in meetyourthinkingcoach.com in there. And so has Alan and Erwin. You take on the books of Goldratt and your views on the relationships between them. Yeah. So that's your take on them. I think that's one of the things that we've really realized, isn't it? That as we talk, we've got a lot in common, but we've also taken our own backgrounds and we pluck out the bits that make most sense to us. So yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely.
Mike has added, really like the emphasis on culture, and that's too often overlooked. And I think if there's anything we could all agree on, especially if we're really good at engineering and flying airplanes, that the emotional, the EQ is and culture and all that kind of stuff is just really important. Scott,
Actually,
I haven't read the other books yet. Scott, you will love them. They're absolutely brilliant. And Hamid,
yeah.
I hope I've said your name, pronounced it correctly. Teach the system to problem solve. And this is something that the three of us talk about just about every week, is that we've realized that problem solving together is a lot like eating together. In fact, we meet over a kind of, like at lunchtime, and it is like it's like eating together, and it creates not only good solutions but an environment for doing it. So yeah, really good point there. Lovely. Hey, look, we did you want to? So I'm just conscious of the time. We're just 4 minutes over the hour.
Yep.
How about we hang around for another 5 or 10 minutes? But that's everything there. So thank you for everyone. We had a fantastic turnout. Thank you so much for joining up. I'll send out a little email following this up and just send you the details of the recording of this. Feel free to share it with anyone if you like, and I'll send you a link to the Corkscrew Thinking webinar and also to Karl's page he mentioned, and then yeah, and we're going to try and do a lot of these. When Karl and I kind of almost spontaneously did last week's one, and then we spontaneously did this week one, just purely selfishly.
Yeah.
It's really good for us. I learned a lot, so thank you.
And thank you. I really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to us getting stuck in together on the next three. So hopefully we will see you there. And in the meantime, enjoy the rest of your weeks. And yeah, I hope this was of value. So cheers. Really appreciate it.